morning. The most news in the morning, period. Weekdays 6 Eastern.
People are calling this protest a little bit of a political stunt, including Nancy Pelosi. What do you say to that?
Well, I think Friday, when more than 50 House Republicans were lined up to give regular speeches on the floor objecting to the fact that Congress was taking a 5-week paid vacation when we hadn't taken an up or down vote on giving the American people more access to American oil. Friday afternoon, probably was a stunt, but the sustained effort by the Republican leadership that will go throughout this week and perhaps into next week, I think it's not a stunt, it's a feat. I mean, members of Congress are giving up time with their families and with their constituents, and on a rotating basis, either here on Capitol Hill, on the floor in front of citizens, or back home with energy town hall meetings, Republicans are taking the case that we ought to be here, we ought to be working, and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi ought to call this Congress back into session and give the bipartisan majority that supports comprehensive energy legislation with more drilling a vote.
Now, if you were able to get Speaker Pelosi to bring Congress back into session, do you have the votes to pass this bill?
I really believe that we do, Kieran. I've been in Congress about 8 years, and during that time I've seen votes on drilling falter again and again. But in this past year, with the gasoline going over $4 a gallon, it's clear to me that there's now a bipartisan majority of Republicans and some Democrats that would support comprehensive energy legislation that included more drilling, particularly off the outer continental shelf and in the Gulf of Mexico. But we obviously can't make progress on that. We can't send those signals to global markets that would affect futures, would affect oil prices, and give relief at the pump if Congress isn't in session.
See, what I'm wondering is you guys can't even agree on whether or not it really would provide immediate relief. I mean, many of the Democrats, including Speaker Pelosi, says that for years you wouldn't see any benefit to the average taxpayer who's going to fill up their tank for $4 a gallon gas if we started drilling right now.
Well, I know the opponents of drilling make that argument very consistently, but, I take case in point a few weeks back when President Bush lifted that long-standing executive order banning drilling on the outer continental shelf. In the next 2 days, as you saw here on CNN, Kieran, we had the largest 2-day drop in the cost of oil per barrel in 20 years. I have no doubt that the futures market would be affected in the immediate short term the day that this Congress came together in a bipartisan fashion and gave the American people more access to American oil. And as the future markets drop, I believe you'd see the cost per barrel drop, and that would have an effect and relief at the pump for working Americans.
You talked about President Bush. He also has the power to call Congress back into session. Have you guys called on him to do that?
Well, a number of us have called on the president to do that, and I know that his press secretary said yesterday that he doesn't have any current intention to make that happen. And frankly, the president has a good point. He can call the Congress back into session, but he can't make them work. The reason we're focusing on Speaker Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House can call the Congress back into session immediately, and she can also send to the floor the American Energy Act or some other comprehensive bill that includes conservation, alternative sources of energy, and an opportunity to vote up or down on giving the American people more access to drilling into American resources.